My beloved child. Pause here for a moment. The quiet feeling that brought you to these words is not here by accident. There are moments in life when the heart senses something long before the mind understands it. This is one of those moments. Take a gentle breath, set aside every distraction, and listen with an open spirit. What you are about to hear is a fictional message told through the voice of heaven, created to inspire hope, reflection, and courage. I have watched every silent prayer you never found the strength to speak aloud. I have seen every tear that remained hidden behind a smile. I have counted every night you wondered whether someone still carried your name inside their heart. While the world measured your life by visible moments, I looked deeper, into the places where hope refused to disappear even when everything around you seemed uncertain. There is a story unfolding beyond what your eyes can see. It is not a story of fear. It is not a story of punishment. It is a story about truth finding its way through silence. For a long time, words remain trapped behind walls built from regret, misunderstanding, and pride. Yet even the strongest walls cannot keep truth hidden forever. The one your heart continues to remember has carried a burden that grew heavier with every passing day. They tried convincing themselves that silence would protect both of you. They believed distance could erase what they truly felt. They hoped that if enough time passed, the questions inside them would simply disappear. But hearts do not forget what souls remember. Every sunrise reminded them of conversations left unfinished. Every sunset carried echoes of promises they never spoke aloud. Even ordinary moments became unexpected reminders. A familiar song. A familiar place. A familiar kindness shown by someone else that suddenly brought your memory rushing back like a river that refused to change its course. You wondered why certain memories continued returning without invitation. You questioned why your spirit occasionally became restless for reasons you could not explain. You searched for practical answers while something much deeper quietly whispered within you. Not every feeling arrives with an explanation. Sometimes the heart recognizes movement before the eyes witness change. There have been moments recently when you almost let go completely. You told yourself that perhaps everything belonged in the past. Perhaps you imagined too much. Perhaps hope itself had become another disappointment waiting to happen. Yet even as those thoughts surrounded you, another quiet voice remained. It did not shout. It did not argue. It simply stayed. That small voice continued saying that not every chapter ends where people believe it does. Many people mistake silence for absence. They mistake waiting for failure. They mistake hidden growth for nothing happening at all. But look carefully at the seed beneath the earth. Before anyone sees life reaching toward the sky, countless unseen changes have already begun beneath the surface. Roots grow where no applause exists. Strength forms where no audience watches. Transformation begins long before anyone notices. So it has been with this story. The one you have wondered about has reached a place where pretending has become more painful than honesty. They have stood at crossroads again and again, choosing familiar silence because it felt safer than vulnerable truth. Yet every path they selected eventually brought them back to the same unanswered question. What if they waited too long? That question has followed them through ordinary mornings and restless nights. It has interrupted celebrations that never felt complete. It has appeared during quiet drives, crowded rooms, unexpected conversations, and lonely evenings when no one else could hear their thoughts. They discovered something surprising. Distance changes circumstances. It does not always change love. This realization frightened them more than they expected. Because once truth enters the heart clearly, pretending becomes exhausting. They began remembering details they believed were forgotten forever. The way kindness appeared in unexpected moments. The conversations that seemed ordinary but later became unforgettable. The laughter that arrived effortlessly. The comfort of simply knowing someone understood them without endless explanations. Memory became a mirror. Not one that trapped them in yesterday. One that revealed what truly mattered. There were times they almost reached out. Their hand paused above messages never sent. Words formed inside their mind only to disappear before becoming reality. They rehearsed conversations that existed only in imagination. Not because they lacked feelings. Because they feared the answer more than the silence. Regret has a peculiar way of disguising itself as caution. People convince themselves they are protecting their hearts. Often they are only protecting their fears. My child, understand something important. Every soul faces moments when courage arrives disguised as discomfort. The easy choice often keeps wounds hidden. The brave choice allows healing to begin. Whether healing leads toward reunion or peaceful release, truth always serves the heart better than endless pretending. There is another part of this story that remained hidden even from them. While they struggled with uncertainty, they unknowingly began changing. Not dramatically. Not overnight. Slowly. Quietly. Almost invisibly. Life humbled them in ways they never expected. Situations arose that taught compassion where judgment once existed. Loss created gratitude. Waiting created patience. Disappointment created understanding. The person standing today is not exactly the same person who once walked away from difficult conversations. Growth often speaks softly. Its greatest victories happen within. You have changed too. Perhaps you do not fully recognize it. You survived seasons that once seemed impossible. You learned to stand after moments that nearly broke your spirit. You became gentler without becoming weak. You discovered resilience without losing tenderness. Even your prayers changed. Once you prayed only for answers. Now part of your heart quietly prays for wisdom. That difference matters. Because wisdom prepares the soul for blessings that simple desire cannot sustain. Still, there remains something unfinished. Not because fate demands it. Because honesty has not yet completed its work. Imagine standing beside a river at dawn. The water reflects the sky perfectly until one small stone touches the surface. Suddenly circles spread farther than anyone expected. One truthful moment carries similar power. One honest sentence can travel farther than years of silent assumptions. This is why the burden within them has become impossible to ignore. Every day they postpone honesty, the weight grows heavier. Not because anyone forces them. Because the heart naturally longs for freedom. And freedom begins where truth is welcomed. Perhaps you have asked me why certain connections seem impossible to forget. Not every meaningful connection exists to become permanent. Some arrive to teach. Some arrive to transform. Some arrive to awaken forgotten parts of who you are. And sometimes, after seasons of growth, two transformed hearts are given another opportunity to meet with greater understanding than before. No human being can predict such moments with certainty. But hope and wisdom may walk together without fear. Do not mistake this message as permission to stop living while waiting for another person. Continue becoming who you were created to be. Continue showing kindness. Continue choosing peace over bitterness. Continue building a life filled with purpose. For love that requires you to abandon yourself was never the kind of love heaven intended for your journey. Meanwhile, something continues unfolding beyond ordinary sight. Conversations are beginning inside a heart that spent too long avoiding them. Questions once ignored now demand answers. Excuses once accepted no longer bring comfort. The truth keeps knocking. Again. And again. And again. Each time more gently. Each time more clearly. Until eventually even silence begins sounding louder than words. There will come a moment when choices can no longer remain suspended between yesterday and tomorrow. Every season reaches its appointed conclusion. Every hidden feeling eventually seeks light. Every unfinished sentence longs for its ending. The one connected to this story has reached the edge of such a moment. They stand between fear and honesty. Between comfort and courage. Between holding everything inside and finally allowing truth to breathe. Yet there is one detail they still do not know. One realization has not fully reached their heart. It is the very realization capable of changing everything they believed about you, about themselves, and about the road that separated your lives. When that final piece becomes clear, nothing in this story will remain exactly as it was before. And that moment has not arrived quite yet. My beloved child. The silence you have been trying to understand is not empty. It is filled with questions that have not yet found their voice. Before you allow doubt to write the ending of this story, remain still for a little longer. Sometimes the most meaningful answers arrive only after every other explanation has failed. This fictional message is offered to encourage reflection, hope, and the courage to seek truth with wisdom. There is a place where every honest heart eventually arrives. It is the place where pretending no longer brings peace. The one connected to this story has reached that quiet crossroads. They have discovered that running from emotions does not erase them. Ignoring memories does not rewrite them. Time can soften pain, but only truth can bring genuine peace. For many days they believed they could continue living as though nothing important had been left behind. They smiled when others expected them to smile. They laughed during conversations that felt ordinary. They completed responsibilities, celebrated small victories, and kept moving through life. Yet beneath every ordinary day was an extraordinary question that refused to disappear. What if I misunderstood everything? That question became louder than they ever imagined. Every answer they once accepted suddenly felt incomplete. Every conclusion they once defended began to lose its certainty. They started looking back, not with bitterness, but with honesty. The moments they had once dismissed as insignificant began revealing new meaning. They remembered the patience you showed when no one else noticed. They remembered the kindness you offered without expecting recognition. They remembered conversations that seemed simple at the time but now carried a depth they had overlooked. What once appeared ordinary now seemed precious. This realization did not arrive all at once. It unfolded quietly, like morning light slowly filling a room after a long night. The more they reflected, the more they recognized how often fear had spoken louder than love. Fear of rejection. Fear of disappointment. Fear of making the wrong decision. Those fears built invisible walls that seemed impossible to climb. But fear grows weaker when truth is welcomed. And truth has been gently knocking upon their heart. There have been unexpected moments recently when your memory appeared without warning. A familiar scent carried them back to a forgotten afternoon. A simple act of kindness reminded them of your character. A passing conversation made them wonder how differently life might have unfolded if one conversation had happened with complete honesty. These moments were not dramatic. They were quiet. Yet sometimes quiet moments reshape an entire life. You have wondered whether your prayers were heard. Know this, no sincere prayer disappears into silence. Every hope entrusted to heaven is received with perfect understanding. The answer may not always arrive in the form expected, but wisdom is never absent from my care. Perhaps the greatest lesson hidden within this season has not been about another person at all. Perhaps it has been about preparing your own heart to choose peace over fear, compassion over resentment, and hope over despair. Because only a healed heart can truly recognize healthy love. As this story continues, another unexpected change begins within the one who has carried these unspoken feelings. They stop asking what others will think. They stop rehearsing excuses. They stop searching for reasons to remain silent. Instead, a different question rises within them. What if honesty is worth the risk? That single thought changes everything. Courage rarely appears as a loud declaration. More often, it begins as one quiet decision repeated again and again. One step. Then another. Then another. Before long, the path that once seemed impossible becomes the only path that brings peace. Still, not everything is as simple as it appears. There are circumstances neither of you fully understand yet. There are conversations that happened without your knowledge. There are misunderstandings that grew larger simply because no one paused long enough to replace assumptions with truth. Sometimes people build entire stories from incomplete information. Sometimes they protect themselves from pain by believing the worst. Sometimes they walk away, convinced they have no other choice. Yet even then, grace has a remarkable way of creating opportunities for understanding. You may never know how many times your name has been spoken in quiet moments when no one else was listening. You may never realize how often your memory interrupted ordinary days. Not because the past demanded attention, but because the heart continued searching for peace. There is something beautiful about honesty. It asks for no performance. It requires no perfect words. It simply invites two hearts to stand without masks. Whether that honesty leads to reconciliation, forgiveness, or a peaceful farewell, it always leaves the soul lighter than before. Do not confuse uncertainty with failure. Many journeys include seasons where the destination cannot yet be seen. Travelers often believe they are lost simply because the road bends beyond their sight. Yet the road continues. So does hope. So does growth. So does grace. My child, continue becoming the person you were created to be. Do not allow another person's choices to define your worth. Do not measure your value by silence, distance, or unanswered questions. Your identity was never meant to rest upon another person's approval. It rests upon the unchanging truth that you are deeply loved, wonderfully created, and never forgotten. If this story reminds you of someone, let it also remind you of yourself. Be brave enough to forgive where forgiveness brings freedom. Be wise enough to set healthy boundaries where they are needed. Be humble enough to admit your own mistakes. And be hopeful enough to believe that truth, spoken with kindness, has the power to change lives. The chapter ahead has not yet been written. Its pages remain blank. Not because nothing is happening. Because every choice made with honesty writes a different ending. And somewhere, just beyond the horizon of what either heart can presently see, a conversation that once seemed impossible is beginning to move from silence toward truth. What will be spoken first is something neither of you expects. My beloved child. There are moments when a single conversation changes far more than anyone imagined. Not because every problem suddenly disappears, but because truth finally finds the courage to step into the light. The story before you has been moving quietly toward such a moment. Neither heart can see the entire picture yet, but both have begun sensing that silence can no longer carry what honesty was meant to reveal. The one whose heart has remained unsettled has reached a place where excuses no longer bring comfort. They have replayed countless memories, not to relive the past, but to understand it with clearer eyes. They have begun noticing details they once overlooked. The patience that was mistaken for weakness, the kindness that was taken for granted, the quiet strength that remained even when circumstances became difficult. Perspective has a remarkable way of changing when the heart becomes willing to learn instead of defend itself. They have discovered that some of the conclusions they once believed were never built upon complete understanding. Pieces of the story were missing. Assumptions quietly filled the empty spaces, and those assumptions became walls that neither of you intended to build. Now those walls are beginning to crack. Not through anger. Not through pressure. But through humility. Humility opens doors that pride can never unlock. As these realizations continue unfolding, another unexpected change begins within you as well. Whether you noticed it or not, you have become less interested in proving yourself and more interested in living with peace. The questions that once consumed every waking thought have slowly given way to something gentler, a quiet confidence that your worth has never depended upon another person's uncertainty. That transformation matters more than you realize. For when the heart finds its foundation in peace, it no longer chases what is meant to come freely. It no longer begs to be understood. It becomes steady, patient, and wise. This is the kind of strength heaven delights in shaping. The path ahead is not asking you to become someone different. It is inviting you to become more fully the person you were always created to be. Meanwhile, The one connected to this story finds themselves standing before opportunities they once avoided. Conversations they postponed now seem impossible to ignore. Feelings they buried continue rising with greater clarity. Every attempt to distract themselves only leads back to the same unmistakable truth. Some stories refuse to end because something meaningful still remains unfinished. There have been quiet evenings when they almost reached for the phone. There were mornings when they nearly wrote words they had rehearsed 100 times. More than once they opened a message, stared at the empty space where honesty belonged, and then closed it again. Not because love disappeared. Because courage was still growing. Courage rarely arrives all at once. It grows through small choices. It grows each time fear is acknowledged but not obeyed. It grows each time the heart chooses sincerity over comfort. And now, something within them is changing more quickly than before. They have begun asking a different question. Instead of wondering, "What if I am rejected?" they are beginning to wonder, "What if remaining silent becomes my greatest regret?" That question carries tremendous weight. Regret often whispers too late. Wisdom speaks while there is still time to choose differently. My child, whether this fictional story reminds you of your own life or simply encourages reflection, remember this truth: honesty spoken with kindness has the power to restore dignity even when it cannot restore every relationship. Never fear becoming a person of truth. Truth may ask for courage. But it also gives freedom. As heaven's light continues shining upon this unfolding journey, hidden motives lose their influence. Confusion slowly gives way to understanding. Old misunderstandings begin losing the power they once held. There is still uncertainty. There are still unanswered questions. But uncertainty is no longer controlling the direction of the story. Hope has quietly taken its place. You may be tempted to rush ahead and imagine every possible ending. Resist that temptation. Some answers reveal themselves only when hearts are prepared to receive them. A seed forced open before its season cannot become a flourishing tree. Patience is not wasted time. Patience is often where wisdom grows its deepest roots. Continue choosing compassion. Continue choosing integrity. Continue choosing faith over fear. Whatever tomorrow brings, let your character remain stronger than your circumstances. The greatest victories are not always measured by who returns or who stays. Sometimes the greatest victory is becoming someone who can love with honesty, forgive with wisdom, and walk forward with peace regardless of the outcome. Yet the story is not finished. Far from it. For even now, unseen pieces continue moving into place. A conversation is drawing nearer. Words that have remained hidden are preparing to find their voice. Long-held questions are approaching the moment when they can finally be answered. And just before those long-awaited words are spoken, someone unexpected steps into the story with a truth neither heart ever saw coming.